In today's video, we're going to continue our 2019 offseason plan report series, and we're taking a look at the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's coming up next. Welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So we're moving right along here in our 2019 offseason plan series. If you've missed any of the other videos in this series and you want to see if the teams you're looking for have been covered, certainly I'll link to a playlist up here in the YouTube cards. You can check out that list. We're almost halfway through the NHL. If I haven't covered the team you're looking for yet, stay tuned here. Over the next coming days and week or so, we will have the remainder of this series finished off. In case you're new to this series as well, we break it down into three segments. Segment 1, we're going to do an 18-19 season recap where we look at some key team and individual statistics, discuss any significant changes that happened to the team throughout the year. Segment 2, we're going to look at the overall cap situation, any UFAs and RFAs and what kind of contracts they have already within their team to look after. And then thirdly, we're going to discuss potential changes that I think they should make to really move this team forward and to be more competitive and more successful next year. Now let's jump in here with an 18-19 season recap. So as you can see, the Philadelphia Flyers finished with a record of 37-37-8 for 82 points, 6th place in the Metropolitan Division. Unfortunately, out of the playoffs. Of course, the year before they were into the playoffs but lost in round 1 to the Penguins. Obviously, the Flyers took a major step back this year, and as we get into some of the more individual statistics, you'll see kind of what happened here, at least in my opinion. Now let's take a look at some key team statistics from the past year. The power play was 23rd best in the NHL with a 17.1% rating, so obviously that is not good enough. That is not going to get you into the playoffs. The Flyers certainly need to improve on the power play this year. Their penalty killing, unfortunately, was even worse, 78.5, 26th best in the NHL. So special teams did not go well at all for the Flyers throughout this year. Goals for were okay, almost near the midpoint of the league, 244 for 17th best. Goals against, though, not good at all, 29th best out of 31, so obviously this needs drastic improvement. The Flyers team went through a lot of changes this year. Let's take a look at some of the key changes that we've seen. Of course, early in the season, we saw the GM Ron Hextall be fired, and not too long after, we saw Coach Dave Hakstol be fired. So some major changes within their organizational structure here. Of course, GM Ron Hextall was there a long time. I thought he was doing a relatively good job when it comes to building through the draft, getting a lot of prospects on this team. And even though he was let go, I think the upper management above him were getting a little bit impatient with the lack of success rate now. But I do think he left them in good shape for the future with a big pool of prospects to pick from here and add to their team in the next couple of years. Of course, Dave Hakstol has been kind of up and down with the fan base here for the last little while. People were calling for him to be fired even last year. So after new GM Chuck Fletcher come on board, he decided to remove Hextall and certainly replaced him here with Scott Gordon on an interim basis for the remainder of the year. So of course we saw, like I said, major changes in that regard. Now of course they did make a few trades near the trade deadline. They did trade young goalie Anthony Stolarz to the Oilers in exchange for veteran netminder Cam Talbot, and they did trade longtime Flyer Wayne Simmons to the Nashville Predators for Ryan Hartman. And of course, recently here, just before as the offseason is getting underway, they did announce they have a new head coach, and that is a longtime successful coach in Alain Vigneault. Now let's take a look at some key individual performances, including their goaltending and some top scorers. Now a big part of the problem with the Flyers this year, again, was goaltending. They went through a lot of goalies early on. They seemed reluctant to give Carter Hart an NHL shot right away. He went to the American Hockey League, but out of necessity was brought up later on, but thankfully did relatively well and proved a lot of people wrong here. I know former GM Ron Hextall was really all for giving him more time to get his seasoning in place in the American League. And really his American Hockey League season kind of started a little bit shaky as well. So it looked like it was the right call early on. But after seeing Elliott and Neuwirth be down for extended periods of time, you even had Alex Lyon and Anthony Stolarz weren't getting it done. They had no choice but to turn to Carter Hart and give him an opportunity here. And he certainly made the best of it, going 16-13-1 with a .917 save percentage and 2.83 goals against. There was a point in the year when Carter Hart was a little bit more involved in the Rookie of the Year consideration, but as time went on, other rookies kind of surpassed him in their performance, including youngster Jordan Binnington for the Blues, kind of grabbed the spotlight for young goaltenders. But Carter Hart, I think, is a great young goaltender, had a pretty good first taste of the NHL, and is certainly well on pace here to be their starting goaltender for many years to come. He's getting a good experience right now with Team Canada over the World Championships with new head coach Alain Vigneault, as Vigneault's coaching that team, and Carter Hart is one of 3 goaltenders on the roster. Taking a look at some of their top scorers for this past year, led the way again by Captain Claude Giroux, who had 85 points. Another strong year from him. Sean Couturier, again, had another solid year, 76 points. The last couple of years, he's really proven to be a really solid offensive force and a solid two-way player for sure. Jake Voracek's numbers were down a bit this year, 66 points, and his name has been mentioned in a lot of rumors as well, which we'll get into here in the next segment. Obviously, Travis Konechny had a decent year for the Flyers as well, 49 points. In the big offseason signing from last year, James Van Riemsdyk did put up 27 goals, but he missed a chunk of time early in the year. Only played in 66 games. So putting up 27 goals, he had a couple of hat tricks in there. Overall, I think JVR played relatively well. Once he kind of got in his groove, got healthy, and was in the lineup on a consistent basis. Let's take a look at their salary cap situation, including their RFAs, UFAs, and what they have for cap space to be able to handle all this. Now, taking a look at their UFAs, there's not a lot to pick from, and you're going to see a trend here that they're all goaltenders. You've got Cam Talbot, Brian Elliott, and Michael Neuwirth. I think it's pretty safe to say that Brian Elliott and Michael Neuwirth will not return. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but I do think there is a possibility they retain Cam Talbot. I know Talbot didn't have the best year last year, but he does have a very good relationship with Carter Hart. They've known each other, been close for a while, and I do think they would be interested in signing him to kind of be a bit of a mentor to him. Obviously, he didn't do too badly in the games he played, but it'd be nice to see him get a chance and a fresh start here with some different scenery for a full year. So I won't be shocked if they decide to hang on to Talbot and make him the backup to Carter Hart for the coming season. After July 1st, they do have a couple of forwards that are eligible for contract extensions coming out of their entry-level deals, and that's Nolan Patrick and Oscar Lindblom. So there's certainly a possibility that they could consider locking them up longer term this summer as well. But they don't have to. They could wait to see how the season goes. They will be RFAs next year, so nothing to be too concerned about. But depending on how they feel about it, they could lock them up to extensions as early as this summer. Now, looking at their RFAs, it's a long list, and there's a lot of contracts here, some important guys that they need to get sorted out this year, including defensemen Ivan Provorov and Travis Sanheim. Provorov certainly had a down year. Him and Gostisbehere were a big part of the reason why that power play was not clicking at a higher rate. They did not produce the offense from the back end like they had the year before. Major steps backwards, but hopefully they can regain their form here and move things forward for next year. Now, Travis Sanheim certainly had a breakthrough season for sure and became a bigger part of that decor. He's going to be very important for them to sign as well. Of course, you get some forwards including Ryan Hartman and Scott Lawton, likely will be qualified and retained. You get Travis Konechny as well, who's been a pretty solid goal scorer for them. And then you get Justin Bailey as well. So for salary cap space, right now they have 15 contracts in place for next year for a total of $49.5 million, which gives them $33.4 million in cap space. So they do have lots of flexibility, lots of cap space, but as we just seen here, they do have a lot of RFAs, but they're certainly not going to eat up all that money. They do have room to go shopping for a UFA or potentially make some trades where they take on more salary. It's certainly a possibility. They're in a pretty good spot that way when it comes to the cap. The Philadelphia Flyers are also blessed to have one of the best prospect pools in the NHL, in my opinion, which I discussed earlier. I think GM Ron Hextall and his staff did an excellent job at drafting over the last number of years. So let's take a look at some of their top prospects who could fill some of these roster spots as early as next year. Of course, they're led the way here by Morgan Frost, who had a terrific year in junior. He's certainly going to be turning pro next year and certainly going to be a big force, I do believe, when he makes it. I think he's got an excellent shot at jumping to the Flyers roster next year. They also have Isaac Radcliffe, Joel Farabee, German Brustov, Matthew Strome, and hopefully get a full year to Philippe Myers. Myers did get finally more of a chance to play near the end of the year and looked pretty decent, so I do think that there's a pretty good chance Myers makes this team and plays a regular basis next season. Now, outside of Morgan Frost, I'm not sure that any of these other players are going to be NHL ready, but they're certainly going to be making the jump to pro hockey. They're all under contract. Radcliffe and Farabee especially are going to be two dynamic wingers, I think, that are going to be big parts of their future here. So I do expect them at the very least to be in the American Hockey League and possibly get some action at the NHL level depending on injuries and how their season goes. Now, what do the Flyers need to do to move forward and get this team better for next year? Obviously, GM Chuck Fletcher is going to be looking to kind of leave his mark on his team and start to shape things the way that they feel it needs to be more competitive. We saw the start of this at the trade deadline. As I mentioned, they acquired Cam Talbot for Anthony Stolarz. I really don't think they would have traded a younger goalie like Stolarz if they didn't have the intention of signing Talbot to an extension. So that's why I do believe on the UFAs that he likely will be retained. Of course, they traded Wayne Simmons to Nashville. That didn't really work out, in my opinion, for Nashville. I don't see Simmons staying there. Hard to say where he goes. Could he return to Philly? I guess it's a possibility, but I'm not really sure that they're going to want to give him the money he's looking for as a free agent to return. I mean, he's going to be 30 years old. He's probably looking for a 6 or 7 year deal. I'm just not sure that's something they're going to want to hand out, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. but I don't think it's likely in the cards. But I guess we'll see how GM Chuck Fletcher feels about that. Secondly, though, they do have some big-time RFAs, as we just went over here, that they need to get signed, especially guys like Konechny and Provorov and Sanheim, and proved to be very important players last year. They need to get them locked up. Hard to say what kind of deals they're likely going to be getting. I would think most likely they're all looking at bridge contracts. I'm not sure any of them have really broken out too much yet that they want to do that 7 or 8 year deal just yet. I think we're probably looking at, probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years at most with these guys. Is the most likely contracts. But it's very important they get that hammered out as early as possible so they know what else they're dealing with here when it comes to the salary cap, so they can plan when July 1 hits for free agency to see what else they can add to this team. Now, of course, there's been plenty of trade rumors around many NHL teams, but the Flyers being a big one. We've talked about the possibility of them trading Shane Gostisbehere, maybe Jake Voracek. There's certainly an argument to be had for both. I do think they could add some more offensive punch to the forward group, so trading Voracek would certainly detract from that. So it's hard to say that you're really going to be able to trade him for somebody who's going to come in and do a better job, at least right away. With the emergence of Sanheim and even Myers on the back end, it is a possibility they could look to trade Gostisbehere. I do think it does make some sense. Obviously, though, if he rebounds, it could, maybe not be the greatest idea. But I do think it's a possibility they look at trading Gostisbehere, trying to add some more offensive punch to the forward group. It's something they have to consider at the very least. I do think it's less likely they would trade Voracek, especially having a down season, and he's proven to be a big part of their offense here for many years. So more than likely, if they do go down the trade route for one of the rumors that we've heard and been discussing here on the channel, I think it's more likely that Gostisbehere is the guy that goes. However, if Gostisbehere is not traded, guys like him and Provorov really need to bounce back. They absolutely need to get better and get back to the form they were the year before. They were big parts of the offense, big parts of the power play, and having him have down seasons had a major impact on this team. They certainly should try to trade it. I know it won't be easy, but defenseman Andrew McDonald, his time certainly needs to be coming up here. This contract has been unfavorable for a long period of time, and McDonald's time is at its end here, in my opinion. At least it should be. If they can't trade him, or they could consider doing a buyout. He's down to 1 year on his contract, so a buyout would not be overly expensive. It frees up a roster spot, does save them some money on the cap, so I do think that's something they need to consider here as well. Whether they do it through trade or through free agency, I think they should consider adding another center iceman, somebody who can play that number 2, number 3 spot. I do think it's worth possibly looking at maybe moving Nolan Patrick down to the third line and giving him less responsibility here, really let him develop his craft. For somebody who in his draft year was highly touted to be number 1 overall, ended up going number 2 to the Flyers just a few years ago. He has back-to-back 13-goal seasons. I do think he's capable of more, but perhaps he's getting too tough of an assignment a lot of nights. I think he might be better off to be pushed down the lineup here a little bit. Maybe look to a guy like maybe a Nazem Kadri if they made a deal with the Leafs, for example. He's rumored to be available. Or they could look to the free agent market. Maybe a guy like a Kevin Hayes, for example. Somebody who's been proven to be a solid number 2 center and kind of take the pressure off the youngster. Based on their forward group, they could certainly pair him with some other offensively young players as well. Certainly not going to hurt his development. That would give them a lot more forward depth and also allow him to develop more for the future. All in all, I do expect a busy offseason for GM Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers. I think there's all kinds of potential moves they could make. It certainly will be interesting to see how far they go with it and how different this team might look in the fall. So certainly leave me your thoughts and your comments down below on what you think GM Chuck Fletcher should do for the Flyers this offseason. What do you think are the most important moves he needs to make this year to make this Flyers team more competitive for next year and hopefully get back into the playoffs? If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, subscribe for more videos in this series. There's plenty more content coming. And also give this video a like if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.